The music of the post-revolutionary Soviet Union was a segment of expressive exploration. Join me today as I take a deeper dive into this exciting topic. Many challenges arose concerning the design for musical representation of the proletariat. The author Amy Nelson writes in her book, Music for the Revolution, that the leftists devised many strategies to eliminate the gulf between elitists and popular music cultures. A few prominent organizations involved were the Russian Association for Proletarian Musicians, or the RAPM, and the Association of Revolutionary Composers and Musical Activists, or the ORKIMD. These were two unions in the new nation concerned with developing an idiom for the working class. Nelson comments that activists noted frequently that unlike other arts, especially literature, music and musical life seemed virtually unaffected by the revolution. The concert halls still bore the marks of social elite, and the streets still sang to the poor and lower classes. Soon after the establishment of the Communist Party, the RAPM and the ORKIMD would attempt to mold the social reform of musical expression in the populace of their newly created country. Areas that drew attention fit into the multitude of classifications, but some of the more noteworthy were typically dance, folk, and storytelling in nature. Waltzes and foxtrots made their way into the sheet music and nightlife, while streets and public spaces had traditional gypsy songs of love and tragedy filling the air. Jazz music was exciting and new, and the pre-revolutionary enthusiasms for Western dance persisted. Tour groups brought their new styles like the Charleston, shaping the mid-20s into erotic decadence reminiscent of high society. While increasingly popular, it was heavily criticized and eventually indicted by the 30s during the Cultural Revolution. The folk songs that were of particular interest to party officials was the street music of the underclasses. These uncategorized genres existed decades prior to the revolution and held focus because of their popularity and ability to communicate with large segments of the populace. The party would eventually pay mind to the political content of this music as it proliferated during the early years of the Soviet Union. This music included cruel romances, underworld, and street songs. Some of its descriptions included overwrought, trite melodic content and melodramatic lyrics about illicit love, betrayal, and infidelity. Some of the songs were more lighthearted, but they often spoke of police corruption, social upheaval, and consistently evolving commentary on social events. Soviet ethnographers and researchers consistently monitored them for political content. Other genres like waltz and gypsy were heard throughout this time and experimented with by composers to develop a style that could be nationalized into a proletariat ideal. The main complications arose from the fact that music involved the emotions more than the intellect. As Nelson writes, the abstract nature of musical expression set it apart from other artistic forms that relied on more concrete language and images. Many other factors led to music proliferating, while other forms of art were quicker to experience censorship and limitations. Anatoly Lunacharsky, the leader and person responsible for the preservation of the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow in 1922, would write extensively to Stalin, arguing about the cost benefits of maintaining a music culture for the masses. Other scholars like Marina Frolova-Walker and Jonathan Walker would go on to explain in their book, Music in Soviet Power, that the thinkers might have been sent into exile, but the players remained, and indeed their time was only just beginning. The Western influences of music would one day be considered decadent and unfit for the Soviet populace, but for a time, jazz and black American culture would be embraced as a style oppressed by the elite and fit for the proletarian sensibility. This would be relatively short-lived, whereas the moral crusaders in the United States would be unable to stifle the spread of jazz as it stretched across the American continent. Soviet criticism would eventually curtail its expansion. Next, we will look at some interesting figures in the jazz world of early Soviet culture, but until then I leave you with a popular folk song that would endure the unions and critics to become an acceptable expression of early Soviet life. This rendition of Bublitchki, an old folk tale about peasants selling buns in the street, is highly stylized jazz performance by the famous Berry sisters of the mid-20th century. Thanks for watching, and see you next time as we dive more into music, history, and its intersections with the modern world.